Hey, my name is not Franny, and and I want to talk about Breaking Bad. So first off, Breaking Bad is really good. Yeah, basically it's like near perfect in terms of just like storytelling, but there are like some social issues that kind of it doesn't get like perfectly. I mean, like, so I first watched the show. I watched like all 6 seasons in like 5 days, because I started watching it after all seasons were out. So I was like super addicted to it. Addicted. We're gonna be talking about addiction in a second, but anyway. But that was like shortly after the 6th season ended. So, it was a while ago. It was before the whole Trump thing. And then I watched it again after the election, and I have to say, it kind of hurt. Like some of the racial slurs and stuff, like, because I'm half Mexican, so, you know, after, like, I mean, with the whole Trump thing in mind, it just kind of stung a little bit. Like, the first time I watched it, I knew those things that they were saying were offensive, like, mostly it's the things that the cops say, but I wasn't, like, particularly hurt by it. I was just kind of like, well, yeah, so they're just racist, stupid cops, you know, typical. But then watching the show again after the election, after the 2016 election, it kind of hurts. So, I mean, you know, that's just like one of the few problems that I have with it. And I know they're not like trying to be hurtful with it. And I know that like in the last season or so, they switch from having the bad guys be Mexicans to being white supremacists. So I really don't think the people behind the show are racist, but you know. And I would say that this show it's the kind of show that seems like it should have a meaning, like some sort of like message, something that it's like showing, because it seems really deep, right? But I would guess that it really doesn't have like much meaning, or like the people behind it didn't intend for it to like have any specific message or meaning or moral, really. I just, you know, from how convoluted it is. And it's not convoluted. I don't know why I said that. That's not the right word. It's maybe it is convoluted. Just like not the show in general, but just like the moral of it is not super clear. You have to kind of dig for it, and different people come up with like wildly different things. So I don't really think that this show had an intended meaning. But I'm gonna assign it one anyway. I'm gonna assign it a meaning that I found in it the last couple times I watched it. But we're gonna get to that later, because if it doesn't have any like specific meaning or message or moral, then all this show is just like a really gripping show with great characters and great dialogue and a great soundtrack. So in terms of being gripping, just like the amount of like intensity it has, it's very intense like the whole way through, and it's really impressive because it doesn't have like an extreme amount of violence. It actually is like very not violent compared to like most of the stuff on TV in the past few years. And so it's like, and that's impressive that it can be so intense without being like super violent. But also I appreciate that, because I don't like super violent stuff usually at all. So that's, and just another thing that's really great about it is this: it is super intense without being super violent, and I think that shows that. I think that's because the people behind the show know that things don't have to be super violent to show how intense they are. Like, just a little bit of violence is intense enough. And you know, and I talk about this kind of a lot, it seems like, with like, well, I talked about like like sexual assault and stuff with like Gerald's Game, and other stuff, like how a lot of people, when they depict like sexual violence and I guess, I mean, even just violence, in shows and stuff, they feel like they have to take it like up to an 11, and that's the only point at which, you know, it's meaningful, like it matters in the story. That seems to be what a lot of people think. But they're wrong, and this show proves them wrong, and the people behind this show, like I've seen like an interview with like the creator, Vince Gilligan or something like that, I think, and he was talking about how like violence like kind of makes him throw up. So all violence is like really bad, and it's enough, and all violence is super intense, and that's something that this show gets right, and the people behind it know that. So, and then also like my favorite part of the show is just the first like 1.5 seasons. And I feel like that's not true of most people. I think most people kind of don't like the first season as much. But the reason I like it so much is because it has like this classic sort of story curve. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where like the stakes start out fairly low and then they get higher and higher and higher, and then the story climaxes and then it has like a resolution and it goes back down. That's the classic kind of story curve that the first 1.5 seasons of Breaking Bad seems to follow really well, because it does start out kind of a little more low-key, and then it gradually builds episode by episode, and there's not that many episodes in like the first season, so it builds pretty quickly, but still like pretty steadily, and then it reaches the climax with like the shootout between that crazy drug lord-ish guy and Hank. And then there's like a resolution, and that's kind of like the end of the story, and that's how I like it to go. I like there to be like just a few episodes, not just a few, but like not like a million episodes, like, you know, less than maybe like 24 episodes. I like, and there to, you know, like 13 episodes works. It's how I'm used to things working, I guess, and just I think it works really well. Or you have like just a few episodes, like 13 episodes or 22 episodes, and you just gradually build up to the end of that, and then there's a resolution. And that's the kind of classic story curve that I see in the first 1.5 seasons of Breaking Bad. And then the thing is, though, that after that it doesn't follow that curve anymore. It kind of, what it does is like it follows that curve up till like the middle of the second season or so. And then it has a resolution, but like the intensity doesn't drop that much. It kind of, I mean, it drops a bit, but it kind of stays like in the same area, and then it kind of stays like in the same area, and sort of like it just like stays up there and kind of wibbles, you know? It like wibble wobbles. It like goes up and down just a little bit, all the way until the end of the series. So it never like goes all the way back down and then builds all the way back up again. So that's why I like the first 1.5 seasons best, because they follow like that sort of a curve. And there was something else I was gonna say. Oh yeah. So there's, and also another reason I like the first 1.5 seasons best is because there's like that first few episodes that are kind of like the first story arc, even though they kind of lead into like the whole story arc of the first 1.5 seasons. You know, the story arc that starts that is the story arc with Crazy 8 and Walt killing him, you know? And like the thing is, it was just so well done. The whole thing where Walt had to decide to kill him and then killed him, because like I watched the show at a time when I go through like periods of time where I'm like super like just uncaring about like like the suffering of humanity, because I'm like, oh, people are trash. And I'm kind of going through one of those periods right now, by the way. And so I was like going through one of those periods when I first watched this show, and I was like, just kill him. You know, at first I was like that, you know, I was like, well, just kill him. but like it was so well done that the show actually made me care. It made me actually empathize with Walt and made me like really feel what he was feeling, like this really like just reluctance to kill somebody and how horrible it would be to like feel yourself killing somebody. All of that was like, I felt all of that. And just set the tone for the whole rest of the series for me, because then everything seemed really intense, like more intense because of that, because they made killing even just one person seem really intense. Killing a bunch of people throughout the series, or like hurting a bunch of people throughout the series, seemed super duper intense, you know? Because all of it mattered, because it mattered from the very start for just one person, so it mattered the whole way through. So that was just so well done. Okay, and then the next thing is the characters. It had great characters, like, the characters are, like, multidimensional, and they have these arcs. You know, Hank starts out being, like, seeming like a really super tough guy who has, like, no feelings. Like, I really did buy that at first. That was how he started out. That was how he, like, presented himself to the world. It was kind of just like this facade that, I mean, and you discover that later on that it's just like a facade, because, like, pretty early on he starts, like, having, like, these panic attacks after going through, like, a traumatic experience, like a very violent experience. And you see that, like, really affected him, so he's, like, a lot more sensitive than you would have thought. So even he had, like, a lot of layers, and also, like, he starts out as, like, he had, like, a huge character arc just as big as, like, Walt's, and they kind of went in the opposite direction, because Hank started out as, like, just like a, you know, just like a typical meathead, racist cop who you really don't like, and you root against because you don't want him to catch Walt. And Walt starts out as, like, the good guy who you're rooting for because he's, like, doing this to, like, pay for his family and cancer and stuff like that. And then by the end of the story, Hank is, like, the good guy who you're rooting for, and Walt is, like, the bad guy who's done, like, a ton of bad stuff, and you're kind of rooting against him, and you want Hank to, like, beat him, kind of. So they go through, like, these huge character arcs, and all the characters are, like, very multidimensional, and what helps a lot is the dialogue. So that's the next part. The show has, like, really great dialogue because there are lots of different types of people in this show, and the dialogue for each of them is, like, so well written. It just perfectly captures the way that each type of person really talks. So it's just really well written, and it's really actually funny a lot of the time, and just, like, engrossing, and also just realistic. People actually talk the way they talk on the show. So that's great. Like, it's rare to find a show that has, like, realistic dialogue. It's hard to write realistic dialogue. And then the last thing is it has, like, a really great soundtrack. It has amazing songs. Like, I love the songs that they picked out, and I love the way that they cut the songs to go along with, you know, the scenes. It's really done well. Okay, and now I'm going to get to where I assign meaning to this show. Even though it might not actually have intended this meaning, I think it's about addiction, and, like, different types of addiction, and all the different things anyone can be addicted to. It really shows how anyone can get addicted. Like, Walt is, like, I mean, I'm going to talk about this in a bit, but Walt is, like, a super average guy, and he becomes addicted to what he does. But, like, the first example of this is, like, the most obvious, which is Jesse, and he's addicted to meth. Sorry, and so that's just, like, a super obvious example, right? Like, that's, like, what most people think of when they think of addiction, is, like, being addicted to some sort of substance. But then there's also his girlfriend, the one played by Kristen Ritter, and she is also addicted to meth, but she was the one that actually, she was, like, her character and her scenes were the ones that made me like think about how this show is actually kind of all about addiction, because there's like this scene where her father is like threatening to call the cops and like just send her to rehab and stuff like that. And I don't know if he actually asked this, but he made me ask this: why can't she get clean even with all of his help? Like, he's paying for her to go to rehab. He has paid for her to go to rehab, like maybe twice in the past. I think that was what it was. And then so like he put her through rehab twice, and he's like, and he goes with her to all her like her meetings for like addicts, and like he gives her a job being like the sort of like supervisor of the apartments that they have, and he gives her a place to stay there. And the thing is, I was like, so she has all this stuff, she has all this like support from her father, so why can't she get clean? And the answer is that she knew that he would like eventually call the cops or like make her go to rehab again. Like, she knew that he might have said that he would always be there for her, but he wouldn't always be there for her. He wouldn't be there for her no matter what. There would be a point where she would push him so far that he wouldn't be there for her anymore, that he would threaten to do things to her that she didn't want. That, you know, to send her to rehab, to call the cops, to put her in jail or whatever. She could tell. People can tell, like, even if you do say that you're going to be there for them forever, no matter what, based on, like, little things that you do, and like, past experiences that they've had, and, like, little threats that you make, or that you don't even, like, actually make, but just kind of imply with your actions, people can tell, even if it's just subconsciously, that you're not going to be there for them, no matter what. And I think she could tell that about her father. And so I want to talk about this little clip of a TED Talk that I saw once, and I didn't see the TED Talk, I just saw the little clip, and it was just this guy saying the cure for addiction is connection. And I saw that clip and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, that was something that I thought beforehand, because and this is something that I talk about, like, in my book that I wrote. People talk about how people need, like, constant distractions with their phones and the internet and everything, but that's because that's what you go to. You go to your phone, you go to the internet, you go to technology when you don't have anyone to actually talk to. You're meant to be forging deep connections with people. People are meant to have, like, deep connections with people, but for a variety of reasons, that might not be possible for a lot of people at certain points in their lives. So, like, internet addiction was just kind of something that I have a problem with, because I don't have any friends, right? So I don't have anyone to talk to, so I just spend all my time on the internet. That's something that I knew firsthand. So I knew that I was kind of, like, addicted to the internet, because I don't have any, like, actual real connections with anyone. So I guess I just assumed, I think that must be what my thought process was like. I was like, I just assumed that that's how all addictions are, is that people go to these things that they're addicted to because they don't have anyone to actually, like, talk to. They don't have any actual real connections or friends or anything. So that's just kind of, I think that's just what I assumed, and so that's why that TED Talk clip made so much sense to me. I was just like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, that's what I've been thinking too. Because addicts are just trying to, like, get high with, like, these chemicals in their brains for good feelings. Because the only way to, like, feel good all the time, like, naturally, is just by having love and having passion, and that's the only way to, like, give yourself motivation to keep going, unless you have, like, some sort of, like, unnatural way to do that, you know, like a substance that you're addicted to. It can kind of give you the passion to keep going when you don't have anything else. And so that's all addicts want, is just like to be able to keep going. They want something to give them that passion, that drive, that reason to like to get through the day and to give them good feelings and happiness and blah blah blah. And so with Kristen Ritter's character, like she even said, like at one point, she and Jesse got like their bag of money, and she was like, now that we have all this money, we can do anything we want, and we're gonna get clean for ourselves, not because anyone else tells us to. So she obviously did feel like compelled to get clean because, I mean, in previous times before she had all that money, she like felt compelled to like get clean because her father wanted her to, and her father was like supporting her and giving her like this financial and like other types of support. And the thing is, like, that was before she had all that money. But the thing is, even after she had all that money, she couldn't get clean because in the end that wasn't what she wanted, what she needed. She didn't need all that money. She needed connection. And she didn't have that with, you can't have that with money. And she didn't have that with Jesse because, like, there was even, I mean, there are some scenes where Jesse can't, like, talk to her about stuff and she can't talk to him about stuff. And so they don't have, like, a real connection. They don't really talk to each other. And I think, like, right after that scene happened, I think they ended up, like, doing meth. I can't remember exactly how the scene went, but, like, there was a scene where she was, like, trying to be nice to him, kind of, and he was like, I can't talk about it, and blah, blah, blah. And then I think immediately after that they did meth. I can't remember. It's actually been a while since I've seen the show. I haven't watched it yet this year. Anyway, so the thing is, like, she felt compelled to get clean when her father was supporting her, and then when she was, like, done with her father and she wasn't going to let him force her to get clean anymore and she was going to do it for herself, she couldn't because she didn't have that connection. And I feel like a lot of people, like how she felt with her father, like she had to get clean for him because he was, like, supporting her. I feel like a lot of people feel that way. Like, they don't feel unconditionally loved. They feel like with their parents, when their parents do stuff for them, you should feel like they're doing it for you just because they love you. Because that feeling of connection is what's gonna give you strength and, like, passion and drive to get through stuff. But instead of feeling like that, you feel like you owe them back. So addiction is what gets you through and it gives you passion and drive and good feelings. So she had no, like, real connection. She felt like she didn't have, like, a real connection with her father, which is why she couldn't get clean. And she really didn't have, like, a real connection with her father because he really wasn't going to be there for her no matter what. So she was right that he was, like, kind of forcing her to, like, get clean. So she had no connection with anyone. And so that's why she was addicted to something. And so now we get to Walt, which is, like, the subtlest example. He's also addicted, I think. He's addicted to being, like, to making meth and to being a kingpin. And so the end of the series is him, it looks like to me, like, overdosing on that thing that he's addicted to. He's addicted to being a kingpin, and he overdosed on that and got himself killed, and he dies surrounded by all his meth-making equipment. So, kind of like a meth addict might die surrounded by meth, and with all that meth in their system. So that to me, like, that death scene is very much, I don't know, to me it just looks like he overdosed on being a kingpin. On having power. So he's, like, addicted to power. And the thing is, so he was addicted because he had no real connection with anyone either. Like, he had a family who loved him and he loved them, but, like, at the same time he didn't have, like, a real connection with them. He didn't even feel like he could tell them about his lung cancer, let alone, like, all the stuff that he was doing. so he became an addict. And died from it. Sorry. I laugh at weird times just because I say things awkwardly. I'm not laughing about addicts. Anyway. And like another example could be Hank. I feel like Hank was like addicted to his job and to like tracking down Walt, and he didn't have like a real connection with Marie. Like he didn't let her in or talk to her, like or like open up to her emotionally, and so all he had really was like, all he had to like keep him going was like his addiction to like hunting down Heisenberg and like being a cop, and in the end that got him killed. So I think that the show is about how there's like many ways to be addicted, whether or not you have like everything that you thought you wanted, like a job and money and family and friends and power, you might still not have what you need, because like Walt had all of that stuff and he did his best to keep all of that stuff throughout the series, and he did end up keeping it like by force. Like he even his wife who ended up hating him, like he forced her to like stay with him, but also like drove her away emotionally. So he had her, but he didn't really have her. And same with his son. Like he had his son, but his son also like knew that his father wasn't like being real all the time, and so he kind of drove his son away emotionally too, and he didn't have that real connection. So he might have had all that stuff, he didn't really like have connection, so he didn't have what he needed. So he got addicted to being a kingpin. So it just shows how anyone can become an addict just from not having connection. So be careful not to get addicted if you don't have connection, and know what you really need and try to find it to avoid addiction. That's what I think this show is about. So yeah, that was my talking about Breaking Bad, and thank you for watching, and goodbye!